She's a counsellor and a psychotherapist. She's produced this book. It's called The Way Up After You Break Up, deals with relationship issues. My name is John D. Healy, back to you with another podcast, another guest today. I'll introduce my guest in a couple of minutes. My usual promos: got into podcasting because I wrote a book for my friend Tony McGurn, and that's how it all started. He was born in 1941. My sponsor, Liffey Van Lyne's the moving company here in New York City. They've been around for 50 years, still going strong. If you want to get a good estimate for your move, honest and fair and square, you can't buy experience. And yes, they do move pianos. Give a shout out to JP Cohn, Global Tours, golf tours coming up during the summer. I'm going to give another shout out to Paddy McCarthy of the Irish Examiner. Paddy had a busy week out and about, and Paddy's paper is called the Irish Examiner USA, and you'll find information in there. My last podcast was Pádraig Cahor from Ballina, and JP Reddington, his wife, wrote an article. It's in the paper. JP's dad died last week, so condolences to JP Reddington and the Reddington family. JP flew back last Saturday, and he kindly took back $8,000 from me as my fundraising effort for Pádraig Cahor, who's climbing Mount Everest at the end of this month, actually, and it costs a lot of money, so Pádraig should have that. I did send back some artwork. Another quick shout out: Ireland are playing in Prague next Thursday. They're playing Chechnya. I'm doing a pool for that and some fantastic prizes. A few boxes left, not many. So email me at jh4news and I will be able to let you know. The box is only $100. It's a good deal to get in. Now, getting right to my guest. My guest today is all the way from County Mayo, from Westport. Her name is Anne Holden. She is a former counsellor and psychotherapist. So, Anne, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, John. It's nice to meet you.
So let's talk about you from the get-go. You are a psychotherapist and counsellor. What got you into that career, and why didn't you do nursing and, put a Band-Aid on a sore finger?
A lot of different things came together at the same time. I had a seriously ill child and in a hospital many miles away in England. And I realized how invaluable it was to be able to have someone to talk to. And I'd previously worked as a medical secretary. And through my experiences in the hospital with my son, who luckily survived, it encouraged me to retrain at Nottingham University as a counsellor and psychotherapist.
Okay. So
and then I started working for an organisation, and then eventually I set up my own private practice.
Okay. I hope your son is still doing good. He must be a grown man by now, I guess.
Yes, he is. He's fine, thank you.
Did he follow your career path in the counseling?
No, not at all. He's in agriculture.
Okay.
I used to live in an agricultural county in England, so that was one professional job to pursue on his part. I've got other children, and that's what made me realise, actually, that when you've got a seriously ill child or someone very ill in the family, it does impact a lot of other people who need support.
Yeah. That goes for sure. And I mentioned my friend JP Reddington, John Paul. He's back in Dunmore at the moment. Actually, he's burying his father today. I think anytime there's like a breakup, whether it's a relationship, as such, there's the loss of a partner or a loved one or a parent, and there's a grieving process. And cliches which come up in your book a lot. I have your book here. People say time will heal and things like that. And time is a healer, of course. And then, but you have to have the tools, I suppose, to equip yourself and know how to guard yourself from the breakup. So let's go through some of those things. And I did get some questions in from another client or friend, actually, to ask you questions. But let's start there.
Right.
So before I start, I want to thank you for the book. I want to thank Mildred Byrne for bringing the book over to me, and Howley Grady. They were also on this podcast. So they flew over for St. Patrick's Day. So I'm going to call out some of the questions that one young man sent in. So let's see. In your book, you talk about putting the past behind you. Now, how can you avoid the trap of jumping into a rebound relationship too quickly after a split? So someone breaks up, they're tempted to jump in and hook up again and get involved in a relationship. How do you avoid that?
Absolutely. That is a tendency. probably a lot in our society because we tend to see celebrities doing that and we're often follow them in some way or are influenced. But it's very important to find out why it went wrong, which is what my book is about. And although you're right, I do have some cliches in it, it's because of the cliches that people say when you've broken up, like you'll soon get over him or her, you know, time is a great healer, you've got to put this behind you and live your life now. But those things don't always help. We feel it deeply if we've felt very strongly about someone in a relationship, and it isn't easy to just get over it. I don't think we do. That's what my book is really about, exploring what really went wrong and thinking about it more deeply so that we can make sure, hopefully, we don't repeat that. Because sometimes we tend to choose the same people, even if we think we don't. I do mention that in my book.
The question I observed in my own life and my own relationships going back as far as I can remember, I guess I was 20 years old here in New York, and I fell in love, and I thought I was in love, and I was in love. And for a summer, and I went back to Ireland, to Dublin College. I planned my life around my love to come back to New York and, you know, continue a relationship and all that. And, you know, we did the phone calls, we did the love letters, we learned how to write backwards and correspond and secret love notes back and forth by the mail. And then when I came back and had myself lined up to join university here in St. John's, I found out that the love of my life was cheating on me. And a few friends tried to drop hints, and I wasn't picking up the hints. And then I found out red-handed. And I'm 21 now. So my heart is completely broken, and that's it. So I just had to dump her, you know. And, you know, she lied, she cheated and all that. And do it too. So for me, you know, it was going to take a long, long time. And I did develop other relationships, and ironically enough, a lot of women, married women in particular, are attracted to me for some odd reason. And I'd say to myself, if they're going to cheat on their husband, they'll probably cheat on me. So those relationships, they last for a while. And there's nothing wrong with having a relationship for a couple of years and moving on, you know. Why not? So some of the other questions this young man has for you. So many people naturally focus on what the ex did wrong during the breakup. So this is about the ex. I assume it's the guy writing the question and it's the girl. So what practical steps or exercises from the book you recommend for shifting that lens inward to honestly assets of your own patterns or behaviors without falling into the self-blame? So, like, I guess what the gentleman is saying here is don't feel guilty that you did something wrong if the partner did something wrong. Can you explain that, please?
Yes. I think there are two different things there, really. It is understandable for some people to blame themselves, and it might just be that it wasn't a good match. And sometimes writing down the different things that you think happened and then working out different scenarios. How might I have dealt with that differently? Maybe I could have put a boundary down. That isn't blaming oneself. It's just looking at it and trying to stand back and think, what went wrong with this person? Why did I choose them in the first place? Why did they choose me? And being honest about that. It might just be physical attraction, and maybe somebody's principles didn't align with that person's. Or as in you when you talked about your own experience, someone cheated on you, and did you ever find out why she cheated on you? Was it because of the distance? She felt disconnected? Or did you never find out?
Well, I'd say she was a slut, wasn't she? But, you know, I was away for a whole semester in college in Dublin, so maybe she was lonely.
And that is very understandable when people are young.
And, you know, and maybe a love letter and a phone call wasn't enough. But, you know,
and I think that's a very good point, because actually we don't know how we're going to react in certain situations. Long distance is very difficult to cope with, whatever age group you're in. And so the young man or the man who wrote into you with a question, I would say write down what happened and look at it and how things might have been dealt with in a different way. Certainly don't blame yourself. Just think, next time, if there is a next time, I'm going to perhaps hold back a bit, look at things in a different way, because that is very important. We sometimes have scripts about who we choose, and I do mention that in my book.
Okay. Well, I'll come to another aspect of, like, the dating sites and the dating apps. And people put in, you know, a list of things that they like and a list of things they want. And recently, actually, somebody else I know met a girl on a dating app called Bumblebee or something like that.
Bumble, yes, I've heard of it.
Bumble, okay. I'm just thinking of the bumblebee because I had Conor O'Brien on here a few weeks back. Conor was talking about birds and bees in the real life, but this gentleman got stung with Bumble anyways because the girl was only there, for perceived wealth and money that he had. Okay, and there was a language barrier. She didn't speak English. He didn't speak Spanish, and they were using their phone for Google Translate, and it didn't last. It didn't last 4 weeks. But if you go back to the old days of matchmaking in a parish like Lisdoonvarna in County Clare, where an old man in a village would say that young woman there would suit that young man there, and sometimes it would be an older man that would get hit up or selected with a younger woman, and those marriages worked. And I guess maybe out of necessity. Have you any? Well, let's talk about the dating app first, the Bumble as you call it.
Yes, I don't know it personally, but I've heard of it and quite a few others. And I do think dating apps have their place in society. But actually, if you can meet someone organically in the old way, like Liz Dunvarna, I'm not suggesting everybody comes to Ireland to do that, but a lot of people used to go out with their brother's best friend, and that is quite a vetting process. For instance, because you know what that person's like, really, you know what their family is like. And sometimes that's a big advantage. But I think another thing is people lie on apps or they exaggerate things, but also we have greater expectations of relationships now. It isn't enough to have certain roles. The man goes out to work because now women work as well. And we do expect a lot of one another. Men are supposed to contribute with the childcare and women are supposed to contribute with the finances. And it's a lot of pressure on people. But also we think, they need to be 100% perfect. And I don't think years ago people had quite the same expectations of relationships that they do now. I don't know whether you would agree with that, and maybe the person who wrote in doesn't, but...
Yeah, no, the person that wrote in has more questions. I'll come to them in a minute. But you mentioned there, like celebrities, for example, and I had Thomas Fitzsimons on here. He wrote a book, Ordinary Man, next one. It's basically about Donald Trump and his shenanigans back when they were 45, 50 years old. Donald Trump, as we know, is narcissistic, very needy. I described him in the podcast like a big child in a playpen throwing the toys out. But when he had the affair with Miss Maples, as we call her, and she, pardon the pun, spread her legs and got pregnant, and then Trump was in a bit of a dilemma because now there's a baby, but Trump does what Trump wants to do, and that relationship ended. But it was only ended like weeks and months, and he was desperate to meet another partner. Hence Slovenia, I guess that's pretty women and whatever else, and that's who his wife is, and now they have another baby, Baron. So also in the book, you mentioned a lot about gaslighting. Let's talk about gaslighting for a moment.
Yes, I think it's difficult to always recognize when you're being gaslit or gaslighted. Somebody can sort of make you feel in some ways inadequate. They don't always say what they really think. You're always second guessing. And we know where gaslighting came from, the film years ago, and how the husband actually made the woman think, and other people think, that she was mad or crazy. And there is an element of that even now in gaslighting, not just with romantic relationships, but in work relationships too. People can do that. And sometimes people don't even know they're doing it, but I suspect they mostly do.
Yeah. Well, I think it was classic in the show, was it Dallas, like TR Dallas and Sue Ellen. And Sue Ellen had the problem with the drink, the booze. And anytime he wants to needle her, he would say the remark, "Sue Ellen, you must have been drinking again." And that would drive her to the bottle immediately to like torment her. But, and let's get another question from my listener. So he said, if you could give one piece of advice from the book for a person listening who's fresh out of a breakup, what would it be and why? So someone just immediately broke up.
Give yourself a week or two to just relax and try and sleep a bit when you're not working, because your body as well as your mind needs to recover from a breakup, and it can make us feel physically ill. And then start working on yourself and go out with friends, mix with people that are kind to you, and hopefully eventually you will start feeling more like your old self, and you will probably attract someone else. But those first few weeks are horrible. They're really horrendous. But I don't think you can fast forward through them, because it's like death. You can't just get through those stages. You have to grieve for what you've lost.
So before I'm going to come back, Tan, in a moment, I'm going to get Jimmy to sing a song. We know Dolores Kane passed away this week. Sad loss to the country, to Ireland, indeed. I was a big fan, as many people were. One of her famous songs was Caledonia, and Jimmy Grady is going to sing it for us. Sang it many times.
I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me in these past few days. I've been afraid that I might drift away. I've been telling old stories, singing songs that make me think about where I came from, and that's the reason why I seem so far away today. Let me tell you that I love you, and I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. I have moved and I've kept on moving, proved the points that I needed proving. I have lost the friends that I needed losing, found others on the way. I have tried and I've kept on trying, stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. I've traveled far with my conscience flying, somewhere with the wind. But let me tell you that I love you, and I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. I'm sitting here before the fire, the empty room, the forest squire. Oh, the flames that couldn't get any higher, they've withered now, they've gone. But I am steady, thinking my way is clear, and I know what I will do tomorrow. When the hands are shaken and the kisses flow, then I will disappear. But let me tell you that I love you, and I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had.
Thanks, Jimmy. So back to you, and back to the topic of the way up after you break up. So the divorce rate in America is 40%. That's a lot of people. Like 40% is a huge number of people that don't survive the marriage. What's going wrong?
I think, as I said earlier, there are different expectations now about marriage and long-term relationships. I think we have a lot of more expectations of ourselves as partners and of the people that we couple up with. And there are a lot of stresses that perhaps previous generations didn't experience in the same way. Social media is one route to go down, because it's easy to get in touch with someone without your partner knowing. So it's probably a bit easier to cheat than it was years ago. Not that I'm suggesting people go on social media to cheat, but I know it's easy to get drawn down that road. So that different expectations. People don't live so close to their families quite often. I think it's the same in America as it is here in Ireland. People move away, they haven't got that support when they've got young children. So all these things build up, and perhaps sometimes we're not always used to treating other people's families as we treat our own, whereas years ago maybe we knew that we had to respect the in-laws no matter what. I'm not saying that was a good thing, but maybe it was the case.
Okay, and the ambivalent thought there, like pushing my mother over a cliff. Let's say, in your experience of dealing with couples and like counseling, would you say men or women are the biggest cheaters? Like who's more prone to cheating, or is it 50-50?
I would say it's probably 50-50 mainly. And of course, it's not only about cheating, it's lots of other issues going on. People not pulling their weight in the marriage, not behaving as a team. Perhaps we all have some idea of marriage that we got from our childhoods, watching our parents. So different
Mm,
families operate in different ways. There's often no
mm,
right way and no wrong way. It's just different
mm.
ways of dealing with things and problems.
Commitment would be one big part of it. If there's no commitment, and I guess communication, like my podcast is good to talk, and if the talking isn't in the relationship, there's a breakdown.
That's right. I think you're right about commitment as well, but also maybe divorce. I don't know about America, but maybe divorce isn't frowned upon quite as much as it was in
Mm,
our parents' or grandparents' age. So maybe they stayed together for very different reasons. And
right.
also, we have no fault divorces now, which wasn't the case years ago. You had to have a fault, somebody had to
Okay,
be at fault.
someone has to be at fault. So I guess money is another issue in the relationship. If there's money problems and pressure, that's another trigger, I guess, for divorce.
Absolutely. And how we
Mm,
each deal with money. I think perhaps when we get together with someone, we don't always think about how they budget, whether
mm,
they like to spend what they've got, whether they have
mm.
something put by for a rainy day. So different attitudes towards money
Right.
make a huge difference.
And let's
Some people
talk about,
like to spend their money on cars, etc., and someone else might think, "Well, I'm not bothered about that. I just want to pay the bills every month." That's
okay,
the most important thing. Different
well, I would agree
priorities.
with pay the bills first always. And let's talk about sex in the marriage or lack of sex in a marriage. I had Dr. Lisa Braun on here. She's a sex therapist. She was a student of Dr. Ruth. Dr. Ruth passed away about 2 years ago, and she was a student of hers. When Dr. Lisa Braun was very, very good, but I think the teacher in this case exceeded the student because Dr. Ruth was someone that would use props on TV, especially with issues like oral sex. And I talked about this, pardon the pun, with Dr. Lisa Braun, like women not willing to do perform oral sex or men not willing to perform oral sex. And then the marriage might end up being like a sexless marriage. So
Yes.
what do you think about the sexless marriage? And also, we'll go off in another tangent. What about an open relationship? Like if I'm not giving my wife enough sex, can I say to her, well, you can play around if you want, just don't do it in front of me, you know?
Mm.
And it's okay, but that would have to be, I guess, communication again. They would both have to
Again,
agree on, right?
yes, communication is vital. My experience, not personal, but of that of my clients of having an open relationship is it may work for a while and it may work for some people, but often one person
Uh,
gets jealous in the end and they
mm,
don't like the idea of it. They just went along with it for their partner
mm,
and they
right.
realize that they actually hate it. And sexless marriage, I think that's a very difficult thing to cope with. And there are lots of reasons why people don't make love together,
Mm,
but they need to be explored. And one thing I want to say is that
mm,
counseling and psychotherapy
mm,
often does help couples
mm,
come to terms with things, compromise where
mm,
sex is concerned. It's
mm.
important to be able to compromise sometimes if one's got a higher sex drive than the other. Hope that
Well,
answers the
Dr. Lisa,
question.
it does indeed answer the question. And indeed, Dr. Lisa Braun answered it as well. And in situations, give an example, if the man was like in his 80s and the woman is in her 50s, there's a huge age
Yeah,
difference
disparity.
and
Yeah,
disparities. That's a good word. And then maybe the man hasn't the energy or the desire. Maybe the woman has a high sex drive, and maybe the man
drive.
is like, I'd rather go to the pub and have a pint with my friends. And then let the
Yes,
wife stay at home and do the knitting. But maybe she's not doing the knitting. Maybe she's out meeting someone else. So
yes,
those are issues in the sexless marriage and the open relationship, of course, and divorce. And that they get married, and the priest says, "Until death do you part." And then money we spoke about comes into it. So the commitment, the communication, I suppose those are factors that should be considered. And then in my own situation, I prefer to be single and alone and happy than to be with a partner that's going to make me miserable, or if I make them miserable. There's a lot
Yes.
to be said for a single life,
Yes.
and
But we're a very couples orientated society. So
mhm,
sometimes that's difficult if you're single to see lots of happy
yeah,
couples. And maybe there are expectations from other couples.
mm,
Why are you single? What's happening?
yeah.
Why aren't you with someone?
Oh, that would never bother me. But I'd say for women, there's the baby issue. They get to that childbearing age, and if they're not hooked up by the age of 29, they think they'll never be able to get pregnant. And then
Yes.
you have the other side of the coin where women get pregnant because they want to get pregnant and have the baby and be a single mother. That's, I suppose, another extreme example of the relationship that way, which puts a burden on society in general. If they have to, single mother, a baby, difficult to find employment, difficult, if they're taking time off for a pregnancy and all of that, it makes the choice
Yes.
of hiring more difficult. What else advice could you give, say, young couples starting out? Like, how long should they be in a relationship before they say, okay, let's do the commitment thing. You often find couples very, very happy in the relationship, and then they get married and things go south. What happened
Yes.
between the engagement, the marriage? It's like the three rings: the engagement ring, the marriage ring, and the suffering. The suffering is painful.
Absolutely. I think it needs a lot of communication before they actually get married to see what their different attitudes might be about money, children, saving, and even things like whether they go on holiday every year, because not
Right.
everybody's that keen on holidays, but
Okay.
a lot of people are. And to talk about that and maybe even see a couples counselor for 2 or 3
Mm,
sessions just to iron out any potential problems. And
okay.
it's important that both people know how they deal with stress. Everything's fine when things are smooth
Mm,
and there's a reasonable amount of money and a lot of sex and
mm,
things are going along okay. But if we hit something stressful like illness
mm,
or disappointment or redundancy from a job, that all
mm.
makes a lot of difference. And it's important to see how the other person deals with that stress. And
Well,
if it's not going to be right, maybe before you even tie the knot, so to speak, call it a day.
stress definitely would kill the sex drive, because the man is going to lose interest. He feels ashamed.
Yes,
He feels
yes,
useless in bed, useless in life. He cannot put food on the table.
no,
That's one issue. I suppose one thing that should be ironed out early on in the relationship before they get married: do we want children or do we not? And how many children do we want?
yes.
Is
And it's
one
not
is one
something that we can compromise on. It's a
no,
black or white issue. Might be compromise on how long people wait before they have a child. That certainly
right?
needs to be
Well,
ironed out.
babies are expensive and condoms are cheap. Well, the Catholic Church and probably in Ireland would say to use the safety method, and that
Yes,
certainly didn't work for Bishop Casey in his situation. If he had used a condom, he probably wouldn't have been in the situation where he is. But anyways, his son turned out to be a beautiful man. His wife Annie, a beautiful lady, and it said a lot. It opened minds in Ireland for the Catholic Church about what
yes,
was secret and what wasn't secret. You know, it's like the Epstein files. Everybody seems to know what's in the Epstein files. Who cares whether we find them or don't find them? We know what it was like. And just
yes,
recently here in New York, the Alexander twins, big real estate guys, two twins of course, and their brother, three of them, have been sent to jail for all kinds of abuse of women and rape and stuff like that, which is totally another extreme of deviancy, I suppose, for better words. So,
yes,
and your book is the way up after you break up. And I guess maybe my observation would be there should be a lot of repair work done before you even get to the breakup in the relationship, like preventive things, like maybe
yes,
during the courtship, we'll call it, that things can be
yes,
found out that they're compatible. If they're not compatible, different personalities, different culture, different background. Like divorce rate in America seems to be high among black couples. Now, nothing. That's just the statistics, and that's nothing to say about religion, or maybe stress, maybe money. Who knows? But it's 40%. I think is a high rate of divorce,
yes,
and divorce is not cheap. A divorce
no,
attorney is very, very. expensive. And I remember I had Brian Layden on here. He was a historian and we did the Good Friday Agreement when I was from Sligo. And he reminisced on one of the first divorce cases in Ireland. His analogy was a farmer and his wife. And the farmer has his arm around the head of the cow and the wife is pulling the tail of the cow. And the divorce lawyer is milking the cow in the middle. So who wins? The divorce lawyer, of course. But now with AI coming in, artificial intelligence, a lot of divorces will be simplified and AI will just say, you get that and she gets that. Prenup, of course, important. I'm sure you would advise a lot of your couples to have the prenup. If he starts with a lot and she's in with nothing, half of nothing is nothing, So what's your view on that?
Yes. Well, I think a lot of people think that a prenup is very unromantic and they don't like to go through with it. I can see it's got a lot of sense in it, especially if one person has started out with a lot of assets and the other person has very few. But again, I think it's up to the couple. Sometimes people just don't want it, even though it would perhaps be the sensible thing to do because they have a romantic idea. And not many people want to go into marriage with the idea of breaking up and getting divorced. So I don't have a hard and fast rule about it. I think it's up to every couple to sort out themselves. And certainly some people might be advised to get a prenup.
Well, I'm a single man. I'm living here in New York. I'm reasonably comfortable, not too shabby. My ideal woman would be a nice lady living on Fifth Avenue or Park Avenue that has her own house. Ideally, she'd have 2 cars and a lot of money. And I would marry her without a prenup. Anne Holden, it's good to talk to you today. Your book is The Way Up After You Break Up. Where can people get your book, Anne?
You can order it on Amazon or you can order it through your local bookshop. I don't know how many bookshops in America have stocked it, but they are here in Ireland and in the UK.
Yeah,
yes, so look online. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, thank you for being my guest today. It's always good to talk.